They hid it, then looked me in the eye and said, "You'll never travel again." Holly stood square in my kitchen with the oven mitt still on like a gauntlet, and Daniel hovered behind her, arms folded, a sun trying to look like a wall. I'd already searched the drawer where my passport lived, the tin box with elastic bands, the coat pocket where I sometimes forget it after doctor visits. No passport, just dust. A lonely ticket stub from a ferry long shut down, and my pulse pounding at my temples like a stubborn door. "I'm 74, not 7, I said. "Give it back." "Mom," Daniel started, that patient voice people use with right turns on red and old women. "We're worried. The flights, the stairs, the crowds." "Your mother gets dizzy," Holly cut in, "and you don't always remember your pills." "I remember what's mine," I said. I kept my voice low. Raised voices make neighbors lean over hedges. Holly set the mitt on the counter and opened the cupboard above my head, as if proof of my fragility might be hiding next to the tea. "We're not being cruel. We're being responsible. You don't need overseas to feel whole. There's a lovely coastal trail 30 minutes from here." "There's a coastline across the water with my dead waiting on it," I said. "Different trail." Daniel's jaw tightened. He has his father's jaw and none of his softness. "It's final, Mom. We're not enabling this. We canceled the booking. You can't go." "Can't," I repeated, tasting the word. "Because you took the passport." "Because it's not safe," Holly said. She touched my sleeve like people touch stray dogs. "This is love. Boundaries are love." I looked at the place on the shelf where the passport should have been. The empty square looked back like an open mouth. I'd been careful. Dates, connections, the guest house that still leaves a key under a seashell, the small suitcase, ready under the bed. I had told no one until I told them, and the room chilled when I did. Now the chill had a reason. "Make the police report if you think a thief came in," I said. "I'll tell them exactly when it went missing." Daniel flushed. "Don't be dramatic." "I am many things," I said. "Useful, stubborn, sometimes wrong. I am not dramatic." Silence arrived like a third person. The clock ticked. Someone's radio hissed on the street. In that thin space, I saw it. Their fear, my fear, and the convenience of confusing the two. If you wrap control in soft words, it looks like care. "I'll make you tea," Holly said, already reaching. "Let's sit. We can find a compromise. Maybe a virtual tour? The museum has those." I pictured the harbor on a screen, color corrected, tidy. No smell of salt or diesel. No wind to push a woman back into herself when she thinks she's done. A pretend sea. "No tea," I said. "You should go. Traffic gets bad after 5. "Mom," Daniel tried again, softer now. "Please don't fight us on this. You don't have to prove anything." "I'm not proving," I said. "I'm going." "Without a passport?" Holly's smile was the kind people wear to funerals for men they never liked. "Agnes, be reasonable." My name in her mouth sounded like a label on a jar that didn't fit. I stepped aside so they could pass. They glanced at each other, a quick knot tied and pulled tight. Shoes on. Door opened. A draft curled around my ankles. "We'll bring groceries tomorrow," Daniel said on the step. "Text if you need anything." "I will," I said, and closed the door on their careful kindness. The house breathed out. I stood with my palm flat on the wood until my hand stopped shaking. Then I did the ordinary things women do when they've been told who they are. I washed a cup. I wiped the counter. I fed the basil by the window. Routine steadies the hands so the mind can sharpen its knife. After that, I checked again. Drawer, tin, coat pocket, travel pouch, the book with the hollow cut in the pages back when I thought hiding meant safety. No passport. I sat at the small table and took out a sheet of lined paper, the kind that shows every hesitation in the pen. I wrote 3 columns: what I have, what I need, what I refuse. What I have: copies, numbers, cash for contingencies, good shoes, a body that complains and still obeys. A name at the consulate who used to be a nurse with me and owes me nothing but remembers my hands. What I need: a way to the city, a document that opens gates, a witness if someone decides to speak for me again, a quiet morning. What I refuse: permission. The kettle clicked itself off, though I hadn't turned it on. Old habit? I do that sometimes. I filled it and set it right, then left it there. I took the suitcase from under the bed and rolled it once across the rug to listen for its squeak. It rolled fine, steady and low, a good sound. Outside, the sky had gone the color of dishwater before it clears. I switched on the lamp in the hall. Light pooled, small and sufficient. I took my cardigan from the chair, folded it once, and set it on top of the case. There would be time for pills and socks, and the list stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a cow. There would be time to sleep. I stood at the window and watched the street. A girl jogged past with red headphones. A man dragged a bin that bumped each crack in the path. Someone laughed, far off. My heart settled into its old, strong rhythm, the one it uses when I hold a line in a storm. I am not a storm, I thought. I am weathered enough to outlast one. They'll see, I said to the glass, and the woman in it said it with me. They'll all see. My passport was in the drawer. It had always been there, wrapped in a white envelope marked Travel Docs. I checked it once a month, like one checks on a packed suitcase that might be needed any moment. That morning, it was gone. I didn't panic. At my age, panic is a waste of energy. I opened every drawer, checked the bookshelves, even peeked under the rug as if it might have fluttered away like a stray leaf. Nothing. Did you move anything from my room? I asked Marlene at breakfast, keeping my voice calm. She was buttering her toast with the same aggressive strokes she used for everything in life. Why would I touch your stuff, Mom? She answered, without looking up. Maybe you misplaced it. I didn't misplace it, but I nodded, like I believed her, because I've learned it's better to keep the truth quiet until it's fully grown. That passport had been issued 10 years ago, right before James died. We were planning a river cruise in Europe, something quiet and full of old cathedrals. He passed before we ever boarded. I kept the passport anyway, just in case. A small square of freedom. They started talking about selling the house 2 months ago. It's too big for you, Marlene said. And maintenance is getting expensive. You deserve something simpler. I knew what that meant. My pension, James's life insurance. It was too much money sitting still. I was too much money sitting still. After the second family meeting, when they brought brochures for luxury senior living, I went to the library and printed out train routes. I traced the lines with my finger. Canada. Maybe even Alaska. I didn't need Europe anymore. I just needed movement. But movement is exactly what they feared. Independent women make people nervous, especially when they're over 70. That same night, I checked again. The passport envelope. The small suitcase under the bed. Both gone. You won't be going anywhere, Marlene said the next morning. We need to focus on selling the house. You're not well enough to travel anyway. I see, I said. It's strange how quickly you can become a piece of furniture. I'd raised her. I'd wiped her nose, stayed up with her through colds and breakups and debt. But now I was an old chair in her hallway. Something to be moved, reupholstered, or thrown out. That day, I did my laundry like usual. I folded my clothes slowly, thinking. When Marlene left for work, I made tea, sat by the kitchen window, and watched the neighbor's dog dig up her flower bed for the third time that week. Then I got up and pulled out the tin box where I keep what matters. I took out the spare key to the attic. There, behind the boxes of holiday decorations and broken fan blades, was an envelope. Brown, tied with twine. Inside, a second passport, issued under my maiden name, just a year after James passed. Quietly, without anyone knowing. I sat on the floor and laughed, not loudly, not bitterly, just a soft, breathless laugh, because I'd remembered who I was. Tomorrow, I'd leave. They thought they'd hidden my escape, but I had more than one door. I made it a point to be quieter than usual the next morning. Woke up before Marlene's alarm, tiptoed through the kitchen, and put the kettle on low. I didn't need tea. I just needed to make it look like an ordinary day. Routine is the best disguise for rebellion. She came down half awake, wearing that worn robe she insists is just for around the house, though I suspect she wears it to remind me this is her house now. She gave me the usual glance, a cursory scan, to make sure I hadn't died in the night, then grabbed her keys from the hook. "You'll be okay by yourself today?" she asked, half out the door. "Always am," I said. "Don't forget your pills." "I never do." The door shut with the usual mutter of keys and clipped footsteps. I stood in the silence for a full minute before moving. Then I went straight to the closet and pulled out the clothes I'd laid aside the night before. Nothing flashy, but practical. Layers, good shoes, cardigan with deep pockets. I rolled up 2 changes of clothes, packed them into a cloth tote, and tucked the brown envelope with my backup passport into the inner sleeve. Then I waited. I had exactly 35 minutes before the bus came. Not the city bus. That would be too obvious. No, I was taking the early service shuttle from the church 2 blocks away. Once a week, it took folks into the city center for hospital visits and groceries. I'd used it before. Nobody asked questions. On the walk over, I passed Mrs. Gaines out sweeping her porch. She waved. I waved back. Just another old woman in a cardigan. Invisible in the best way. At the church, I climbed into the van and greeted the driver with a smile. "Long time, Mr. Wilkins." He squinted through his glasses. "Ms. Lorraine, ain't seen you in a while." Needed to stretch the legs. The ride took an hour. No one spoke much. One woman asked if anyone had tried the new pharmacy in the mall. Another mentioned her son's divorce, then went quiet. I stared out the window and let the landscape smooth out my nerves. Billboards, trees, the occasional hawk on a telephone pole. We got dropped off near the central station. I let the others disperse before heading to the public library, where they don't ask why you need the printer or how long you stare at the maps on the wall. I sat at a computer and booked a ticket under my maiden name, Lorraine Mayers. One way, northbound, departing tomorrow morning. I paid in cash at the front kiosk, took the paper ticket, folded it twice, and slipped it into my shoe. Then I walked to the notary's office 3 blocks down. The girl behind the desk didn't even look up. "Do I need an appointment to file a revocation of power of attorney?" I asked. She blinked, finally focusing on me. No, ma'am. Just a valid ID and your documents." I handed her the copy I'd brought, the one Marlene signed 5 years ago, when we thought I might need help with the bank. She took it, made a few clicks, and then looked at me properly. Everything seems in order. It took 7 minutes. With a few strokes of a pen, I took my name back from the people who thought they owned it. On the way out, I passed a flower stand, bought a single yellow lily. Not because I needed it, but because I could. Because choice, no matter how small, is a freedom I intended to practice. When I got home that afternoon, I found Marlene in the kitchen, complaining into the phone about an invoice. I smiled. She didn't even ask where I'd been, just nodded at the tote and said, "You finally cleaned out the attic?" "Something like that," I said. That night, I didn't sleep. Not from nerves, from clarity. Tomorrow, I'd leave. No confrontation, no goodbye. I'd just be gone. The way they left me, really. Slowly, silently, and without explanation. The attic had always been my territory. James never liked climbing ladders, and Marlene said it made her cough. Fine by me. It meant they never questioned what I kept up there. Old photographs, receipts from our first house, my mother's hand mirror with the crack down the side, and a black leather folder I'd tucked behind the insulation panels. I opened it now on the ironing board, the only flat surface Marlene didn't hover over. Inside, my birth certificate, issued in 1949, with the kind of raised seal that's hard to fake. A social security card with my maiden name, edges soft from age, and a medical license I hadn't used in decades. Expired, sure, but real. I laid them out in a neat row and took a picture with my old phone. Then I wrote a list. Not for memory, mine was still sharp, but for order. I've learned that order is how you win when power isn't on your side. Early train ticket, done. Passport, done. Revoked power of attorney, done. Emergency contact change at the clinic, pending. Bank access, pending. Close online tracking, tomorrow morning. I folded the documents and returned them to the folder. Then I opened the small metal box where I'd kept the backup keys. Among them, a safe deposit key labeled B10, Green Bank. James and I had opened that box together. He used to say, "If they ever try to bury us in our own house, we'll dig up our way out through the bank." He meant it as a joke, I think. That evening, Marlene asked what I wanted for dinner. "I'll cook," I said. She looked surprised. "You sure? I can order Thai." "No need," I said. "It's just stew. Easy. Routine, disguise, distraction." While the meat simmered, I slipped the safe deposit key into my bra and opened my old laptop. It still worked, though slowly, like an old dog trying to get up after a nap. I logged into my email and removed Marlene's address from the backup account. Then I changed the password, one final time, to something even she wouldn't guess. I'd named it August River 1949, a date she never asked about and a place she'd never cared to know. The stew was fine. She said thank you. I said nothing. We watched the news, and I pretended to doze. She went to bed first, as always, locking her door, as if she ever needed protection from me. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly, thinking of the river James and I used to walk along during summer evenings, thinking of how the wind there didn't ask your age or your usefulness. It just blew. In the morning, before sunrise, I went to the clinic. Told them I wanted my emergency contact changed back to my niece in Oregon. Marlene had never liked my niece. She's too loud, too opinionated, which meant I trusted her more than anyone else. "Are you sure?" the receptionist asked. "She's not local." "I'm sure." From there, I walked to Green Bank, showed them my ID and the key. They led me into a cool little room with numbered drawers. Box B10 slid out with a soft metallic click. Inside, wrapped in a white handkerchief, were two things: a roll of $100 bills and a necklace. The one James gave me when I passed my final nursing exam. I didn't take the necklace, just the cash. Back outside, I paused at the corner of the street. The sun had come up behind me, soft and slow. The bus to the station would be here in 20 minutes. I had time. A man in a gray coat brushed past me. Didn't look twice, just kept walking. Good. Let them keep thinking I was still theirs. Still paused, still afraid. But I had everything I needed now, and the train wouldn't wait. The station was colder than I remembered. Or maybe I was just more aware of things now. How a breeze finds the weakest part of your coat. How footsteps echo louder when no one's expecting you. I stood near platform 3 with my tote bag over one shoulder and the ticket folded tight in my pocket. No suitcase. Just the bare things. A change of clothes, a little money, and the name I'd decided to keep. The woman at the counter had barely glanced at my ID when I checked in. That was the beauty of age. They see the white hair, the quiet smile, and assume compliance. They never suspect intention. "Train'll be here in 10, ma'am," she said. "Thank you," I replied. No rush. I had spent the past hour moving in small, deliberate ways. Bought a coffee I didn't drink, sat near the bulletin board, and pretended to read community announcements. Took a walk through the small corner shop and noted what they sold: phone chargers, chewing gum, postcards of lakes I'd never seen. The man at the counter didn't look up once. The train arrived 3 minutes early. I liked that. Early means the world still moves without waiting for permission. I found my seat, settled near the window, and tucked my tote at my feet. As we pulled out of the station, I didn't wave, didn't look back. There was no one on the platform anyway. 2 hours in, I changed buses at a rest stop near the border. It was small, with cracked tiles and a single vending machine humming louder than the radio behind the counter. I used the restroom, washed my hands twice, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. Not old, not young, just weathered, like Riverstone. I boarded the next bus and sat by a window again. This time, a man took the seat beside me, middle-aged, balding, wearing a badge on his jacket that said Logan. He nodded once. I nodded back. We didn't speak. The road stretched long and mostly empty. Autumn had started to eat the trees, leaving red bites on the edges of leaves. I watched the passing fields and towns, names I didn't know and wouldn't remember. But that wasn't the point. The point was movement. I was going somewhere. Somewhere not here. At the next stop, I bought a new phone. Nothing fancy. Paid in cash. Registered it with no names, just numbers. I left the old one on the bench, screen cracked, battery low. Let Marlene wonder. Let her call. Let it ring and ring until the voicemail said nothing she could control. In a small pharmacy across from the station, I bought a week's worth of pills. The kind I needed, not the kind they told me to take because they were cheaper. The pharmacist didn't ask why I wanted a printout of the receipt. I folded it and kept it with the cash. By the time I reached the hostel, the sun had gone. A woman at the desk handed me a key without asking for more than my signature. The room was plain: twin bed, lamp, clean towel. A small window looked out over a loading dock. I liked that. Trucks moved at night. So did I. I made tea from the kettle they'd left on the desk, sat on the edge of the bed and removed my shoes. My feet ached, my back pulsed, but I was upright, unfound, entirely myself. Lying down, I heard a train whistle in the distance, not the one I rode, another one going further. I didn't care where it was headed. I wasn't chasing destinations. I was chasing dignity. Tomorrow, I'd go to the consulate. Tonight, I slept under my own name. Morning came quiet. No alarms, no doors slamming. I opened my eyes to a dim gray light slipping through the thin curtain. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I smiled. The ache in my shoulders, the dry air, the low hum of trucks in the alley. All proof I was still free. I boiled water for tea, used one of the instant bags from the tray, and stood barefoot on the cool floor. No one had told me what to wear. No one was checking to see if I'd taken my pills. No one was hovering, asking if I remembered what day it was. I did. It was Tuesday. I repacked my tote in silence. Nothing rushed, just folded each item with care, as if folding meant claiming. My shoes went on last. Thick soles, no noise. Practical, strong. The consulate was 12 blocks from the hostel. I walked the whole way, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. There was something holy about moving forward under your own power. The building was a squat rectangle of stone, flags fluttering overhead. A security guard asked for ID, and I handed over my passport. My real one. The one no one else knew existed. He studied it for a second too long. Then he nodded. Inside, it smelled of dust, old air conditioning, and quiet authority. A woman behind the glass asked what I needed. Temporary travel document, I said. I'm crossing soon. Do you have proof of travel plans? I handed her the train ticket. She studied it, tapped a few keys, and asked me to wait. I sat near the window. It overlooked a courtyard with a bare tree in the middle, branches like old fingers, reaching out and remembering something. An older man beside me coughed once, then fell asleep sitting up. I envied that kind of peace. After half an hour, the woman called me back. You've been cleared, she said. We'll issue the document today. It's valid for 7 days. You'll need to carry both it and your current passport at the border. I nodded. Understood. She hesitated before handing it over. You're traveling alone? Yes. You have family expecting you? No. She paused. Do you want us to notify anyone for safety purposes? No. She handed me the paper. Her eyes lingered for a moment. Not pity, not judgment, just recognition. The quiet nod between women who have each had to walk out of something. I left with the document folded into a plain envelope and a name printed cleanly across the top. My name, not a borrowed one, not the one they spoke only when it suited them. Back on the street, I bought a sandwich and sat on a bench to eat it. An older woman passed by with a terrier in a red coat. The dog barked once, then trotted ahead. She didn't look at me. No one did. And it felt good. The kind of anonymity you earn, not the kind you're sentenced to. After lunch, I walked along the canal. Boats floated slowly past, most empty, some carrying crates. The water looked tired, but steady, like me. I sat there for over an hour, letting the air rinse out the noise in my head. I thought of James. I thought of the first time he took me on a train, how he'd brought a flask of tea and 3 biscuits wrapped in a napkin. Just in case, he'd said. Every journey's easier with a biscuit in your pocket. I wished he could see me now, but maybe he did. That night I returned to the hostel. The clerk looked up. You're back, she said. Yes. Everything okay? Everything's exactly how it should be. In my room, I placed the travel document under my pillow. Tomorrow, I'd cross, but tonight, I would rest. as someone no longer waiting for permission. I woke early, before the light. Sleep had come easy. Not deep, but clean, the kind that doesn't leave residue. I dressed in layers, the cardigan with deep pockets, scarf tucked in flat. I checked the travel document one more time, then slid it between the pages of a paperback I carried just for that purpose. Fiction, ironically, made the best hiding place for the truth. At the front desk, the clerk gave me a paper cup of coffee. "Cold out there," she said. "I've seen worse," I replied. She smiled. Not politely, truly. It's rare, that kind of smile. The kind that says, "You look like someone who's lived something." Outside, the wind bit. Not cruelly, just sharp enough to remind me I was awake, alive, and choosing this. The street was quiet. One delivery van, a cyclist, a dog barking behind a window. The tram came 5 minutes late, but I didn't mind. I had hours to spare. When you've spent years being rushed for everyone else's convenience, stillness becomes its own kind of protest. The border town was 2 hours away. I watched it approach through the tram's smeared glass. Each stop another stitch in the line I was crossing. The buildings grew older, the signs simpler. A man in a brown coat nodded off in the seat beside me, his breath slow and honest. I got off near the crossing checkpoint, still early. The consulate had advised me to arrive before noon. Less congestion, less attention. Their words. Mine were simpler. Earlier means they'll have less time to stop me. But first, I needed shoes. I'd noticed during my walk the day before that my soles had begun to split. Fine for city steps, not for open ground. At a shop near the station, I tried on one pair, then another. The third fit like a memory. Wide enough, laced snug, solid grip. I paid in cash, left the old pair in the bin by the door, and stepped into the street taller. The crossing point was set at the edge of town, past a long line of pop-up vendors selling coffee, cigarettes, and scarves with flags stitched into them. I ignored the calls. I wasn't a tourist. I was a returner. Just before the checkpoint, I paused. A small building sat off to the left, windows dusty, sign half peeled. Public shelter, maybe. I stepped inside to adjust my scarf and heard her voice first. "You look like you need a map, not a border." I turned. A girl, no, a young woman, maybe 30, stood by the coffee machine. Faded hoodie, boots streaked with mud, a backpack too large for her frame. "I don't need a map," I said. "I know exactly where I'm going." "That makes one of us," she replied. Then, after a pause, "You crossing alone?" "Yes." She nodded slowly. "Me too." I looked closer. Her hands were red from cold, the nails bitten down, but her eyes were sharp. "Where you headed?" I asked. "Anywhere not here." I understood. We shared the coffee. She didn't ask questions, just talked about the river near her grandmother's house, how the wind bent the grass in one direction all summer. Her name was Leona. "You?" "Agnes," I said. She smiled. "Of course you are. You look like someone who's had to say no more than once." We walked to the checkpoint together, not talking now, just walking. At the gate, the guards stood with their hands inside their jackets, half asleep, half suspicious. I handed over my papers without apology. The man scanned them, looked at me, then looked again. "Purpose of travel?" "Home." He blinked. "Duration of stay?" "Indefinite." He hesitated, then stamped. Leona went next. Her voice didn't shake. We passed through together into a strip of road dusted with gravel and sunlight. No ceremony, no sign, no applause, just freedom. one step wide enough for two. The first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not silence, but true quiet. The kind that comes when no one's expecting you. No voices calling your name. No schedules pinned to refrigerators. Just sky, open road, and the sense that whatever came next would be chosen. Leona walked beside me without hurry. Her backpack creaked softly when she shifted it from one shoulder to the other. "You hungry?" she asked. "I could be," I said. There was a small diner not far past the checkpoint. Nothing fancy, just a squat building with steaming windows and a cracked neon sign that flickered between open and pen. We went inside. The man at the counter barely looked up, just gestured toward a booth. We sat. Leona ordered eggs and black coffee. I asked for tea and toast. She didn't ask where I was from. I didn't ask what she was leaving. That's the thing about women on the road. The details are never the point. It's the act of going that matters. "You always travel alone?" she asked, breaking a corner off her toast. "I used to travel with my husband," I said. "Then I didn't." She nodded. "My mother says I'm selfish," she said after a while. "That I should have stayed to help with my brother's kids, but she never asked if I wanted to be needed that way." "She wanted your hands," I said. "Not your permission." Her mouth twitched. "Exactly." The tea was weak, but hot. I wrapped my hands around the mug and let the warmth settle into my bones. After breakfast, we walked together to the bus station. She was headed west. I was going north. Different cities. Different ends. We sat on a bench near the schedules, waiting. "You know," she said, "you remind me of someone." "Someone good?" "My grandmother. She had a way of staring at people like she already knew the end of their story." I smiled. "And?" "You don't blink as much as most people. Makes you harder to lie to." I liked her, not in a sentimental way, in the way you like someone who doesn't ask for your story and still holds space for it. Her bus came first. She stood, adjusted her bag, and turned back. "Thanks for the coffee," she said. "You bought it." She shrugged. "Still?" Then she was gone. I sat there alone for a while, watching strangers come and go. One woman with a stroller, two men arguing over a ticket, a teenage boy with earbuds who didn't look up once. Life, still happening. When my bus pulled in, I boarded without a word. The driver didn't ask for ID, just scanned the paper and pointed me to the back. I sat near the window again. The city I was headed to wasn't special. No monuments, no family waiting, no grand welcome. But it had a consulate, and it had an old friend who once told me, "If you ever need a place that doesn't ask questions, come." We'd worked together at a clinic. She was a nurse. Tougher than me back then. Laughed too loudly, smoked too much. But when patients cried, she never flinched. I'd looked her up before I left. She still lived there. Still had the same number. When the bus stopped 3 hours later, I called. She answered on the second ring. "Who's this?" she asked. "Someone who remembers the taste of bad hospital coffee and your favorite curse words." "Agnes?" "The same." She didn't hesitate. "You need a ride?" "No, just an address." She gave it. "I have an extra room," she added, "and a kettle that still works." "I won't stay long." I didn't ask. I wrote it down, folded the paper, and stepped off the bus. The air was different here, drier, a little warmer. It smelled like pavement and pine. I started walking, one hand in my pocket, the other holding nothing, which meant everything. Her name was Ruth. She opened the door in house shoes and a robe that had seen better decades. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, white now, clipped close. But the eyes hadn't changed. Still sharp, still soft in the corners when they wanted to be. "Well," she said, stepping aside. "Took you long enough." I walked slow. "You always did." The house smelled like dust and coffee and something green cooking on the stove. I stepped in and set my tote down by the door. She didn't hug me. Ruth wasn't one for gestures, but she hovered for a moment like she might, then thought better of it. "You hungry?" "Always." She served soup without asking what I wanted. Thick lentil, too salty. I didn't mind. We sat at the table in her narrow kitchen, a clock ticking between us. She watched me eat the way nurses watch patients, quietly, but all-seeing. "When's the last time someone cooked for you?" she asked. "Long time." "When's the last time someone let you be the one leaving?" I looked at her. She nodded. "Exactly." After lunch, we sat on the back step, mugs in hand. No small talk, just wind, birds, the scrape of a rake 2 houses down. "You look good," she said eventually. "I look old." "You always looked like someone who knew where the exits were." That made me laugh, quietly. "And you?" "I still sleep with the same knife under the pillow." "Still think someone's coming?" "Not anymore," she said, "but habit's hard to evict." She let me stay 2 nights. No questions. Just a towel on the bed, tea in the morning, and a spare key placed on the table with a note. "Come and go as you like. The latch sticks. Push hard." On the 3rd day, I took the key with me. I'd heard about a place, a community office with a legal aid desk. I walked there after breakfast, carrying only what mattered: passport, travel document, revoked power of attorney. All the paper that proved I belonged to myself again. A woman with short nails and a direct voice took my name. "You need help with finances, housing, legal protection?" "Not protection," I said. "Clarity." She looked over the documents, tapping her pen once. Then again. "You're clean," she said. "No liens, no restrictions. You're still the sole account holder." "Good. But there's a note on your file," she added. "Recent attempt to freeze assets. Denied." I nodded. "Might want to change your access codes, though, just in case." "I already did." She smiled. "Then you're ahead of the curve." I left with everything I needed and nothing I didn't. Back at Ruth's, I packed slowly. She watched from the hall. "You sure you're ready?" "I've been ready since they told me I wasn't allowed." She handed me a piece of paper with a name and number. "If you get stuck." "I won't." "Still." I took it. That afternoon, I boarded a northbound train. The final one. Small town, coastal wind, a room already booked in a house with creaky floors and a view of the harbor. I sat by the window, fingers pressed against the glass. The countryside moved like an old film. Grainy, soft around the edges, steady. A conductor passed. "Going far?" he asked. "Far enough." The town was smaller than I imagined. One main street, a petrol station, a post office with peeling paint, and a bench out front, cracked and bleached by the sea. The kind of place where people still wave when they pass you, not because they know you, but because they know everyone matters here. The harbor was just visible from the hill. Fishing boats rocked slow in the water, and the wind carried that salty bite I hadn't tasted since James and I stood on the ferry deck the year before he died. The guest house sat near the edge of town, old stone and ivy, a brass bell on the door that rang with real weight. A woman in her 60s opened it. Round face, Quick eyes, no nonsense. You're Agnes? Yes. I've got the second floor room. Sea view if you lean left. Breakfast's between 7 and 8, but I won't chase you if you miss it. Thank you. She didn't ask where I'd come from. I liked her immediately. The room was plain, wooden floor, one bed, a chair, a shelf of worn books, and a window with lace curtains. I dropped the tote on the bed and opened the window. The wind came in like it knew me. That afternoon, I walked. The streets were empty in the quiet way small places are. Not abandoned, just slow. I found the church without trying. Same stone. Same steeple. Older now, or maybe I was. I stood at the gate and watched it, remembering how my mother held my hand there once, how the bell sounded on Sundays. No one came out. I didn't go in. Instead, I turned down a side path, the one James and I took that summer when we were 22, before we were married, before we knew how short some seasons could be. The grass was wild now, but the curve in the trail was the same. At the top, it opened to the cliffs. Below, the water, endless and restless. I stood there for a long time. Later, I returned to the guest house, feet sore, heart steady. The next morning, I dressed early. I had an appointment. The local consular office sat above the bank. The man behind the desk was young, too clean, too brisk. But he was kind in a distracted way. He checked my documents, tapped a few keys, and nodded. "You're cleared for permanent resident status renewal," he said. "Would you like to add a forwarding address for future legal or medical correspondence?" "Yes." He passed me a form. I filled it in slowly. My name. The guest house. A mobile number I now owned, tied to nothing but me. As he entered the data, he paused. "There's a flag on your name." I didn't flinch. "What kind?" "Someone filed a missing persons notice. Family member. Claimed you were mentally unwell, possibly coerced into travel." "And?" "It was dismissed. You passed through legal channels. Your paperwork's clean." I nodded. "Thank you." He lowered his voice. "Do you want to place a block on your records? To prevent future family access?" I looked at him, steady. "Yes." He clicked twice. "Done." Back outside, I walked slower, not tired, just full. At the post office, I bought a sheet of stamps, sent one letter, to Ruth, arrived, crossing complete, still mine. Then I sat on the bench. The wind pulled at my sleeves, and I let it. The tide came in, steady and indifferent. I had crossed. Not just the border, but the line between who they told me I was and who I never stopped being. The wind was stronger that morning. It rushed in off the sea without apology, snapping laundry lines and scattering gulls like leaves. I stood at the top of the coastal path, the one that curved just shy of the cliff's edge, and pulled my scarf tighter. My coat flapped. My feet stayed planted. I had walked there without a plan. I just woke, took tea with too much sugar, and stepped outside. Sometimes the body knows where it needs to go before the mind can explain it. There was a bench near the drop, wood gone gray with salt and time. I sat and let the wind work on me. I had done what they said I couldn't. I had crossed. I had arrived. I had remembered my name in full. But what no one tells you, what the films never say, is that freedom feels quiet, not triumphant, not loud, just still, like a room after the guests leave, like a song that ends without applause. Below, the water kept moving, always moving. It didn't need a destination. It just obeyed its own rhythm. I thought of James, of the way he held a map like it was a friend, of how, once, on a trip through Donegal, he got us lost on purpose. Let's see what happens, he said. Let's not rush toward knowing. We found a hill that day, sat on it, and ate biscuits that had gone soft. I remember him pointing at the horizon, saying, "That's the thing about edges. They always invite you to lean." I stayed on the bench until my fingers numbed. Back at the guest house, I found an envelope tucked under my door. No return address, just my name, scrawled in a hand I hadn't seen since childhood. Inside, a single note. "Mom, please, just let us know you're safe. D. No accusation, no demands. Just that." I placed it on the dresser without comment. I didn't need to reply. My silence was the reply. Later that afternoon, I went into town. The bakery smelled of cinnamon. I bought 2 rolls, paid in coins, and tucked one in my coat pocket. Habit. Some things you carry just in case. At the library, I signed up for a temporary card. The woman at the desk didn't ask for proof of address, just smiled and said, "Use whatever name you like. We go on trust here." I liked that. I borrowed a slim novel, returned to the guest house, and read until the sky turned the color of old bruises. Evening came soft. I made a list on the back of a receipt. Call the electric company. Open bank account locally. Buy gloves. Write to Ruth again. And then, last, visit the cemetery. I hadn't been yet. Not because I was avoiding it, but because I needed to go with nothing unfinished in me. The wind howled outside as I wrote. I didn't mind. Let it rage. Let it remind me that I was here, whole, accountable only to myself. I put the receipt back in the book, marked a page with it. And I slept that night with the window cracked just enough to hear the sea breathing. It was not peace I felt. It was something older than peace. It was return. The cemetery sat on the far side of the hill, past the chapel and the blackberry hedges that had long since overgrown the fence line. I didn't ask for directions. My feet remembered. The path curved where it always had. Soft dirt, stones pushed up by years of frost, the grass taller than I expected. I walked slowly, not from pain, but from intent. You don't rush a place like that. You let it meet you. The gate was unlocked, a simple iron thing, rust curling along the hinges. I pushed it open and stepped through. Nothing had changed. Not really. The rows still slanted with the hill's spine. The older stones leaned inward as if whispering to each other. Lichen covered names in patches, like memory choosing what to keep. I found them near the back. My parents. 2 stones. Weather-worn. Names etched in a style no one uses anymore. My mother's name had always been the gentler one, Margaret, with a rose carved below. My father's had no flourish, just Thomas Lynch, son of fishermen. I stood there a long time, no tears, no shaking, just breath, just truth. They'd buried Margaret in spring. I was 30 then. James stood beside me, holding my hand with both of his. I remember thinking how quiet he was that day, not for lack of words, but for respect. He understood the kind of grief that asks for silence. Thomas died 7 years later, alone in the house he refused to leave. "I was born near salt," he told me once. "Let me die near it." They had wanted a daughter who stayed close, who married young and quietly, who didn't ask for more than her place at the table. I wasn't that daughter. I loved them anyway. I knelt, my knees pressing into the wet ground, pulled out the cloth from my pocket, and wiped the moss from their names. Then I spoke. "I made it," I said. "Not for you, not just, but because you taught me what standing looked like, even when I hated it." A breeze moved through the stones, soft as cloth. "I'm not coming home. This is not a return to obedience. It's a return to origin. That's different. I didn't expect them to answer. The dead don't talk back. I left a lily at Margaret's stone, picked fresh that morning from the guest house garden. Didn't ask permission. Back down the hill, I stopped at the chapel. Doors were open. Empty inside. I stepped in and sat near the back. It smelled of wood polish and time. There were no prayers. I had none to give, just presence. That was enough. On the walk home, I passed a child balancing on a low stone wall. Her mother walked behind, close, but not holding on, just watching. The girl looked at me and waved. I waved back. She didn't ask who I was. That, too, felt like grace. At the guest house, the host asked if I needed anything. "Just a pen?" I said. She handed me one. "Running low on postcards?" Something like that. In my room, I sat at the desk and pulled out fresh paper. I wrote slowly. To the bank, "Please transfer all remaining funds into the new local account, as discussed. Cancel all external access and remove the listed third parties. This instruction is final and binding." I signed my name with full steadiness. Agnes Lorraine Mayers. Folded it. Tomorrow, I'd walk it into town myself. But for now, the sun was coming low across the harbor, and the sea had turned gold. I poured tea. I had nowhere to be, because I was exactly where I belonged. The bank sat in a corner building just off the town square. Stone facade, narrow door, brass handle worn down by generations of hands. Inside, quiet. Polished floors. No music. Just the hum of fluorescent lights and the shuffle of paper behind the glass. I waited in line behind a man depositing coins into a cloth bag. When it was my turn, the woman behind the counter glanced at my form and raised her eyebrows. "You're transferring the full balance?" "Yes." "To this new account?" "Yes." She hesitated. "Do you have a second signature listed?" "Not anymore." She looked again, scanned something on her screen, and nodded. "I see it now. Authorization revoked. It's clean." I handed her the paper. My writing was small, neat, final. She read it through. Then again. "I'll process it today." "Thank you." Before I turned to leave, I added, "Please note the beneficiary on the file. New trust account. Name's already registered." She checked. "Yes. It's under LM Foundation?" "That's correct." Her eyes flicked up. A pause. Not surprise, just recalibration. "Do you want a card made for that account?" "No." "I'm not the one who'll use it." I left the bank with nothing in my hands. No receipt. No folder. Just a lightness I hadn't felt in years. The kind that comes when you close a door yourself from the outside. Back at the guest house, I sat with the host over weak tea and a scone too dry to finish. She asked nothing, just handed me a local paper and said, "Weather's turning." Later, in my room, I took out my old phone, the one I'd reactivated for one purpose only, a message. I opened the app, typed slowly, carefully, no emotion, just the truth. "James," I crossed. "No need to call. No need to find me. All funds have been moved. All rights removed. Tell Holly the house was never hers. I won't answer again." "Mom." I hovered over the screen for a moment, then hit send. Blocked the number. Turned off the phone and slipped it into the back of the drawer under the extra towels, where silence could finally grow without interruption. That afternoon, I walked through town, bought a book I didn't need, posted a letter to Ruth, picked up a loaf of bread and carried it home under my arm like something sacred. In the hallway mirror, I caught sight of myself. The lines, the eyes, the scarf tied tight against the cold. And I thought, I don't look younger. I don't look stronger. but I look uncaught. At dinner, the host told me a girl had come by earlier. Left a note. I unfolded it. It worked. They didn't stop me. One town over, new room, new name. Thank you. L. I smiled, folded it carefully, set it beside the window where the sea could read it too. That night, I poured a single glass of wine, sat with my feet up. No television, no noise. Just the creak of old floors and the quiet that comes when no one expects you to speak. I had given away everything they held over me, and kept everything they never understood. Dignity, and a woman's full name. Full. The wind changed overnight. It came from the north now, sharper, colder, carrying something that made the window panes hum low in the early morning. I liked that sound. It reminded me I was inland again, but only just. Close enough to salt to still feel it in the air. I rose early and opened the curtains before the sun had finished waking. The harbor was still, boats sleeping, water dark as ink. I made tea slowly. No rush now. Nothing to prepare for. No call I didn't want to answer. No doorbell pressed by hands that claimed concern and carried control. The town was quiet that day. Sunday. Bells rang in the distance, slow and even. I walked the length of Main Street without seeing more than two people. An old man unlocking a shed, a girl on a bicycle with her scarf trailing behind like a tail. I stopped by the notice board outside the post office and saw something new pinned there. Community potluck next Friday. All welcome. Below it, another sheet. Legal aid volunteer needed. 2 mornings a week. I took it down. Ruth had once told me, if you've ever been silenced, the least you can do is hold the door open for the next woman through. I folded the page and slipped it into my pocket. That afternoon, I walked back to the hill above the harbor. The bench was wet from last night's rain, so I stood instead, watching the sea pull and release against the rocks. Below me, gulls circled slow. Above, the clouds moved fast. I liked that. That contrast, urgency and patience in the same sky. I stayed until the sun dropped low. When I returned, the host handed me a parcel. No sender, she said, but the postmark's from the city. Inside, a small wooden box, unlabeled, no note, just a thin strip of paper folded inside. I never knew how strong you were. Now I do. LM. Beneath it, a key. Not to anything I recognized. Just a key. Brass, worn, teeth uneven. It might have been old. It might have been new. It didn't matter. I placed the paper in the same drawer as Leona's note. Locked the box. Set the key inside. I didn't need to know what it opened. Some things I'd learned are meant to be carried, not used. That evening, I wrote 3 letters. One to the legal aid office, offering my time. One to Ruth, short and warm, promising a visit before winter. And one more, addressed to no one. I folded it and placed it in the back of my journal. It read, to any woman who finds this, if they take your papers, your name, your freedom, remember, you don't have to ask to take them back. You just have to start walking, even if you don't know where it leads, even if you do it alone. Especially then. The room was quiet. The sea was louder now, closer. Tomorrow, I'd buy a new coat. Nothing urgent, nothing dramatic, just something I chose, just something warm. I bought the coat on a Wednesday, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to choose something that would last. Dark green, heavy, with a deep collar I could turn up against the wind. No frills, no flash. Just quiet strength sewn into wool. The woman at the shop looked at me once and said, "Looks like it was waiting for you." I nodded, paid in cash, walked out taller. Back at the guest house, I packed slowly. My time there was ending, not because I was being moved, but because I was moving on my own terms. I had found a small flat above a bookshop near the square. One room, good light, old floors. The kind that creak when you walk like they're asking, "Are you sure you want this step?" And I was. The landlord had asked for references. I gave him Ruth's number. He called her while I stood by the window. I could hear her voice faintly through the phone, laughing once, saying, "If you have any sense, you'll rent it to her. She won't need you. And that's the best kind of tenant." He handed me the keys. So now I sat on the floor of my new space, surrounded by books I hadn't read and windows I hadn't looked out of enough yet. The kettle whistled on the stove. I didn't rush. Outside, people moved with their heads down, coats pulled tight. The season was changing again. I didn't mind. I liked weather. It reminded you that you were part of something larger than yourself. In the corner, a box waited to be unpacked. The one with papers, letters, the backup passport, now long expired. I didn't burn them. I didn't need to. Keeping them was not a wound. It was a record. Sometimes survival isn't escape. It's standing still and saying, "I remain." I poured tea, sat on the floor, watched the light shift along the walls. Later that evening, I walked down to the square. The library had pinned up a photo from the last potluck. Women in wool coats, plastic cups of cider, one child asleep on a chair. I saw Leona again. Just a glimpse. She didn't see me. That was enough. On my way home, a woman in her 50s stepped out of the bakery just as I passed. She looked at me, paused. "Excuse me," she said. "You used to be—" "I still am," I said gently. She looked confused, then smiled. "I've seen your name on the notice board," she added. "You're helping now." "Not helping," I said, "just standing beside." That night I opened my journal again. The letter to any woman who finds this still rested in the back. I added one line, "And if no one believes you, believe yourself first." Then I closed the book and breathed. Not like someone who had finished something, but like someone who had finally begun. If this story touched you, share it. If you saw yourself in it, speak. If you felt quiet reading it, let someone louder feel your voice. We do not wait for permission to be whole.